Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2. Today I wanted to make a real quick video for all of you guys playing Stormweaver that unfortunately woke up to a rude awakening and got your Frost build absolutely annihilated. Yesterday I posted a build using Spark, taking advantage of Cast on Freeze, where my Spark was applying freeze, and then with my Cast on Freeze I was shooting out a lot of comets. And 2 hours after I posted that video, it happened to just get absolutely taken out of the game. Pretty much any cast on skill got completely annihilated. So today I wanted to make a video showing you guys how you can swap to a build that, one, I think is just unbelievably strong, probably Stormweaver's overall best build currently, at least as far as I've seen, and also I don't think it really runs the risk of being nerfed. I didn't really have to swap very much because I was predominantly a Spark build anyways, and I was kind of ready for this nerf to happen. But for those of you guys that are playing Frost, you probably didn't expect this, and it's a little bit difficult to kind of just transition into a completely new build. So today, I'm going to show you guys how you can do that, and also kind of just give you a rundown of what I'm currently using. There's a few different ways to set it up, so I'll try to be a little bit thorough, but I don't want to take too much of your guys' time. Before I get into things, I want to give a big thanks to today's sponsor, Raycon, which has the most affordable and, as you can tell, the best looking day-to-day earbuds on the market. The last few months I've been going on walks and runs pretty much every morning, or at least I try to, and it's been a real struggle to find earbuds that don't cause problems. Either they constantly fall out, they're disconnecting because the wind has really high speeds, or like me sweating is just breaking them. Luckily though, Raycon sent out a pair of their everyday day-to-day earbuds for me, and I couldn't be happier about it. Not only is the sound quality top-notch, but they are entirely sweat and water resistant, being able to even withstand just being dropped in a pool, which is kind of insane. And my favorite part is that it fits snugly in my ear, so I just pop them right in. Boom, and they don't move around at all. I can shake my head as much as I want, get a little hairbang going, and I don't have to worry about constantly readjusting them or anything while I'm running. Not to mention, it's available in a ton of very pretty colors, my favorite being the purple, of course, and you can even get a custom case that the earbuds come in. So I have this pretty little one here that I quite like, pretty unique, and just makes you happier to own them. The best part is that Raycons are pretty much half the price of, or even like a third of the price of a lot of the other leading earbud brands, without sacrificing any of the quality that you would actually come to expect. There's never been a better time to grab yourself a pair of these. If you head on over to buyraycon.com/Nick2, you'll get up to 25% off site-wide. Yep, you heard that right, 25% off when you go to buyraycon.com/Nick2. Pretty much the perfect time to grab yourself a pair, and is also a very good gift for the holidays. Big thanks Raycon for sponsoring today's video. Real quick, if you're curious about what nerf actually happened, so basically, trigger skills. Previously, the maximum energy required, I'll use Cast on Freeze as an example because that's what we were all using on Sork. Maximum energy required to actually proc a Cast on Freeze, therefore procking a Comet, I believe it was around 150. That has now been increased to 300. Also, the amount of energy gained per enemy that you'd freeze used to be about 100, something like that. I had a high energy gain modifier, so I was getting about 160. Basically, if we wanted to map this out, now it is 10. So if you get 10 energy per enemy that you freeze, and then with an energy gain modifier, I have 79% for whatever reason, so 17.9, or sorry, 10 times 1.79. I have 17.9 energy every time that I freeze one enemy, and if I do 300 divided by 17.9, instead of taking one singular enemy to proc a comet, it now takes 16.7 freezes, or 17 entire freezes, to proc one comet. So, yeah, your build effectively got 17 times weaker, however you want to math that out. That is really not fun and pretty much killed any Cast on X Comet build. So the question pretty much is, what do you do now that your build does not work anymore? You pretty much just swap entirely over to Spark. I don't think Spark is really at risk of being nerfed. The only thing that might be nerfed here is Archmage, because you can scale the damage with it very high. Talk about that in a second, but basically, like, if I were you, what would I do? I would just follow this build that I have linked here. This is an early mapping Spark build. This will just get you on your feet. You can just copy the skill tree exactly, copy the skills. This assumes that you don't have like a ton of gear or anything like that, and you just want to be able to play the game. This will help you out a lot. The main difference between this setup and what I'm using currently is that this setup is assuming that you do not have very much energy shield gear, and you just got into maps, so I'm not scaling energy shield on here. The way that I'm getting defense on here, and what I'd recommend very early, is getting these nodes. Percent of damage is taken from mana before life, and that will help you out a little bit, as well as just scaling HP and evasion super early on. So if you're doing like T1, T2 maps, simply just copy paste this. Once you have a bit more gear and you have a lot of like energy shield gear just saved up, then I would recommend swapping all the way over to energy shield, which I am currently using, which we can then use to even scale our mana more. and get a whole bunch of damage out of it as well as survivability, and that's when I would swap over your tree to what I will have linked, which is what I'm currently using. But it does require a bit of gear, and there's a few different ways you can set it up, so I want to briefly go over that. I don't want to take too much of your guys' time, but if you want to know how the build works, I'll quickly explain the skills. Spark, you want Arcane Tempo for cast speed, Control Destruction for more damage. Later, I might swap this out, but for right now it's good. Projectile speed and duration scale how much damage Spark does theoretically, because if Spark lasts longer on the ground, then it's going to do more damage, and if the bounces bounce faster, it's going to hit the mobs more and basically rebound faster, so that also makes it do more damage. Because I'm using Archmage, Archmage gives you a percentage increased damage per mana that you have, which makes mana scaling extremely good, but it also makes our spells cost extra mana, which is why I'm using Inspiration on here. If I didn't have mana problems, I wouldn't use Inspiration, I would use Persistence for more duration. You could also use Pierce, but that makes the Spark pretty expensive to cast. But Archmage is unbelievably potent. I'd recommend putting it on as early as you can, and this makes maximum mana basically a multiplicative damage scaler for us. As a result of me having 3,000 mana currently, I'm getting a 200% increase from this alone, and we already want to scale our mana because that gives us cast speed via Arcane Surge in our skill tree here, and that also is going to give us mana regeneration rate. So scaling mana already is powerful for us, and that makes it even more powerful. Flame Wall I've just had on from leveling. On bosses I'll put it down and shoot through it, but it's not all that useful. Conductivity I only use it on bosses just to reduce their resistances. Orb of Storms is good. Put it down and it is going to apply exposure, so you just deal more damage to enemies. And also Font of Mana for more mana regeneration while we are in it. Lightning Warp is nice as a killing strike. I mainly use it for movement. If an enemy is low HP, I'll press it, and then also I have Soul Drain, so it gives me a little bit of mana. Frostwall I only use so that I can just have something to put Energy Barrier on. I might even swap it from Frostwall. Frostwall is nice survivability wise. If I get like, a million mobs are on top of me, I put it down and they can't hit me because they have to run through the Frostwall. And Energy Barrier is good for Energy Shield because if I am stunned, I can put it down and it will instantly start recharging my Energy Shield. Mana Tempest is crazy good. Put it down. It costs a lot of mana, but it makes you do 78% increased damage. And you can buff it with pre-med, make it do 15% more. And also giving it a Killing Strike is pretty nice. Most of the time I don't really stand in it unless I'm fighting a boss. A lot of the time I'll just put it down, shoot a little bit, and I'll just keep progressing the map. If you stand in it, it will completely annihilate your mana. And with this build, you're basically playing a balancing act of trying to scale your max mana, scale your energy shield, and scale your mana regeneration rate all at the same time without having to sacrifice too much of one or the other. At some point, once you have enough energy shield gear, I would swap all the way over to energy shield, and what you need to do that is pretty much just go into your skill tree and just pick up a lot of energy shield nodes, things that give you maximum energy shield, faster start of energy shield, and how much increased energy shield recharge rate you want is kind of going to be anecdotal based on your playing experience and what kind of difficulty of maps that you're doing. The skill tree is really just swapping out what you need at any given time. You can always go for more damage, you could go for more maximum energy shield, or you can go for more energy shield recharge rate depending on where you're at. With this build, once you have enough energy shield, you want to swap to Chaos Inoculation so that your max life is 1, and then you are immune to all chaos damage. And then you want to scale up your resistances as much as possible, but ignore chaos resistance entirely. You'll see though that my energy shield is not particularly impressive, and that's because I am using Eldritch Battery, which converts all of my energy shield to mana. The reason that I am able to also get energy shield while having this active is basically this amulet, where 30% of my mana counts as extra energy shield. This value gets scaled up by increased energy shield, so instead of just getting only 1,000, I'm getting up to 3,000. So you can see if I take this off, I get 0 shield. The reason that I'm using Eldritch Battery is basically so that I can get a ton of extra mana, so Archmage has more value. Early into the build, until you get this amulet, doing this is just straight up not viable, but also this nerfs your energy shield by a lot. If I don't have this equipped, I guess I can just show you real quick. If I take this off, I have 7.6k energy shield, in which case I'm nearly unkillable, but I really like the added mana that I get. I went from 3,100 to just 1,700 without this. So this is huge for damage, but if you just want survivability and you don't have this amulet, which costs like 50 exalts or something, then simply just don't play Eldritch Battery. Another thing that I'm doing, which is probably only viable when you have Eldritch Battery, is I am playing Mind Over Matter. This makes it to where it doesn't matter that my shield is all that low, because if my shield gets depleted, then I can take damage from my mana as well. So I have a little bit more of a cushion. I'm considering swapping this out entirely, or swapping out Energy Shield recharge rate entirely, and going for I might anoint this, where life recharges from flasks, and I might just spam my flask, ditch all Energy Shield recharge rate, and then just spam get as much maximum ES as possible. And maximum ES converts into more mana via Eldritch Battery, and more mana converts into more of the ES that I'm getting here. And also more mana increases the amount of effective Arcane Surge that I'm getting. So it's pretty much a balancing act of all of those things simultaneously. I'll have a link to this skill tree and what I'm using right now, but I swap things out all the time. And currently, I'm not set up for boss damage. I just wanted to see what my survivability would feel like. If I wanted boss damage, I would go into skill effect duration here, and also skill effect duration up here. I'm missing quite a lot of that. But otherwise, the stuff is pretty straightforward. You just grab some lightning damage, you grab effective arcane surge, some damage here and elemental resist. I'm also missing some cast speed, which would be particularly helpful. Whole bunch of energy shield up here, lightning damage up here, energy shield, and then this is a lot of mana regeneration and percent increased mana. Skill effect duration, projectile speed, energy shield recharge rate. And in your jewel sockets, you can get increased cast speed, faster start of energy shield recharge, and increased skill effect duration, which is very, very good as a package. And you can get these for like 1 exalt, so it's pretty nice. I'll probably go into this next and then grab this jewel socket, and that'll be quite a nice damage and survivability increase. And I also have this jewel socket down here. So quite a lot of power to be gained through the skill tree, and a lot of this is kind of up to preference. There's a ton of different ways that you can set it up. When it comes to ascendancy points, you want to go for this down here. I've been messing around with Heart of the Storm, but I don't think it's great because the recoup takes 8 seconds to give it to you. So I'm probably just going to play with Scouring Winds for 20% increased damage with exposure, which is really strong. If you're playing that freeze build, you're probably very used to mobs being crowd controlled all the time, in which case getting Kotoko's Current is almost mandatory. It's extremely powerful. You electrocute mobs, they get electrocuted for like, it says 5 seconds, but I swear it's like 8 or something. But maybe it is just 5 and I'm dumb. It's pretty insane though, and you can pick this up for like 1 Exalted Orb. If you are still spec'd into all cold damage and stuff, what you could do, if you don't have enough gold, but you for some reason have exalts, you could pick up a Call of the Brotherhood. This converts your spark damage into cold, so you'll still scale all of your damage with cold damage, and it will freeze enemies constantly, so this is still pretty good. I imagine the price on this will probably tank because people don't use Cast on Freeze anymore. See, it's already tanking 10 exalts. So feel free to pick that up, I suppose, but right now I'm just using Kotoko's Current, and then on every other piece, I'm basically just trying to scale up my energy shield, max mana, and resistances as much as possible. Mine is pretty weak right now. Like a lot of my pieces, this doesn't have as much mana as it could. This could have way more energy shield. This could have a little bit more mana and resistances, blah, blah, blah. You can get a chest with upwards of like 800 energy shield, and not only does that give you survivability, it also gives you mana, which is damage. So getting gear with very high energy shield numbers on it, flat numbers, is the best way to give yourself defense and survivability simultaneously, or sorry, defense and damage simultaneously. But if you're not playing Eldritch Battery, then don't worry all that much. It's not going to be giving you extra damage per energy shield that you get, but you still want the mana because that will buff up your Archmage. Still playing around with this. It's possible that later into maps I can't use Mind Over Matter anymore. It's kind of messing with my mana. Or it's possible that I can't use Eldritch Battery anymore. But once I get better gear, I believe you could probably get upwards around 5,500 energy shield and a similar number of mana if you were to have nearly perfect gear. But we'll just have to wait and see how that actually plays out. For your gear, you want a wand and a focus. The wand is good because it gives you spell damage and you can get max mana, and try to get level of all lightning spell skills and cast speed. Focus, get as much energy shield as possible, mana, level to all spell skills, and you can also get spell damage on here, which is pretty good. Kotoko's Current is, I would say, very, very good for defensive stuff, or you can just get gloves with energy shield and resistances. Every other piece is pretty much just energy shield, mana, resistances. Energy shield, movement speed, mana, resistances. As much energy shield on the chest as possible. mana, resistances. And keep in mind that using armor scraps to increase the quality on stuff like this is going to make the energy shield value go up. So use those on your chest first, because the energy shield value on your chest is very high. You can see mine is at 618. If I take it off, my energy shield goes down by almost a full 1,000, and it's a similar story with my mana. So getting a good chest is like the biggest power increase you can get outside of getting a good weapon. Helmet, energy shield, mana, intelligence, because intelligence converts into mana, and resistances. Rings, mana, cast speed, all resistances, and flat resistances. And again, try to get Everlasting Gaze. You need this if you want Eldritch Battery to actually work for you so that you can get Energy Shield. Otherwise, you just take it off and then don't play Eldritch Battery and you just have like 7,000 Energy Shield. It's fine. Not a big deal. I recommend using Immunity to Freeze Charm once you play Energy Shield because you get frozen quite a lot. So that is pretty good. And I'd recommend grabbing yourself an offhand weapon that has Sigil of Power on it, because you can just put this down every once in a while and it just gives you extra damage, and you can slam in a magnified effect so it just has a larger radius, and boom, that's pretty good. Real quick, I'll just do I have a T10 map on me? Yes, I do. I'll do a T10 map. We'll juice it a little bit. My game will probably lag, so my bad. I've been having to re-go maps because I just don't get enough returns. It's pretty insane, and I'm consistently doing maps above my level. Survivability hasn't really been an issue almost at all, which is why I decided to go the Eldritch Battery route. But if I got to a point where I was dying a lot, it's okay. I would just lose, what am I doing? I would just lose a little bit of damage by taking Eldritch Battery off, and then I just have, you know, a crazy amount of energy shield. I would just lose some mana, so I'd lose probably about 50% damage by not having what's it called on Archmage, and then I would take off Mind Over Matter, and then I could lose some mana regen nodes and I'd have a little bit more mana, or I could just keep this on and it would just act as like, you know, 1500 extra HP basically. There's some stuff that I want to play around with still, but anyways, when it comes to actually playing with Spark, you pretty much just want to tap your right click while you're moving and don't spam it unless you're trying to kill mobs very, very fast. And then if you fight mobs, if you don't do enough damage, it's okay. You could just, every time you go to fight a pack, you can put down your Mana Tempest, and that will increase your damage. And if you find an elite, you want to throw down your Lightning Orb and do Mana Tempest, because the Lightning Orb is going to give you exposure, so that will make you do a lot more damage. If you're like just swapping to the build and you're having damage problems, then I'd recommend like every single pack that you enter, try to just put down your Mana Tempest. Don't stand in it too long though, because the longer that you're in it, the more mana that it'll drain, and sometimes it'll just drain your mana near instantly, which is pretty rough. Also, if you have the Sigil of Power, you could also use that anytime that you find an elite. So what I do, I guess is a good example. I can do it right here on the expedition. So I'll set up the detonation real quick. Kill these mobs. You can see that them getting electrocuted is pretty insane. And most mobs are just kind of dead by the time I even get near them, and I don't really have to go out of my way to put down Mana Tempest, because I'm kind of just lazy. Alright, set up the explosion here. So what I'm going to do, which is very nice about Spark, is that I can kind of preempt this. Keep in mind I'm missing a lot of duration, so this is not as good as it would be if I had way more duration, which I'll probably do later. But anyways, I like to Sigil of Power, put down an Orb of Storms, Mana Tempest, and then just get out some things early. And then by the time the mobs spawn, they will just be spawning into sparks that are already on the ground that have a massive damage increase. You can see that my mana is kind of scuffed right now, and that is a result of me using Mind Over Matter, reducing my mana regeneration by a crap ton. But it's fine. I will find ways to fix that later. I just need a little bit more mana regen, or if I get more flat mana, my mana regen will be better. I think eventually playing Mind Over Matter is not the play, but early, if you want the survivability, it is nice. I'll do the same thing with this Essence real quick, just to kind of demonstrate it again. So you just want to preempt a bunch of stuff and then press it, and then by the time it spawns, everything kind of just instantaneously dies, right? My energy shield gets hit a little bit, not a big deal. The recharge is pretty quick. I could spec out of some recharge because I have Mind Over Matter as a little bit of a defensive layer also. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff with this build that's pretty much, you can swap it. Why am I in a T10 map and it's dropping a T1 map? GGG. Are we playing a real video game right now? That's crazy. Anyways, you get the idea. My gear is not anything insane, and as it gets better, I will optimize this a little bit better and try to figure out the absolute best way to set it up. But I've had pretty much no issues with it like this so far. And if I run into survivability issues, I'll just take Eldritch Battery off and lose a bit of damage, take Mind Over Matter off, and then I have more mana anyways, so I can just sit in Mana Tempest more and spam more. So I'll just kind of do similar damage anyways, so I'm not really all that worried about it. I guess I could show Lightning Warp, which I have not been pressing. I often forget to do it. I don't even have it bound. Here, where's Lightning Warp at? Boom. I'll show it off a little bit. Get mobs low HP. Okay, they're just dying way too fast. They're dying too fast, dude. I swear it's useful. Boom, hit that guy. A little bit of extra mana. Insane, right? Anyways, I'll probably make updated videos on this, and I'll find better ways to present builds, but yeah, hopefully you guys found this helpful, and I will see you guys later. Peace.